y'all doing? How did y'all enjoy the first keynotes? Was y'all taking notes? Okay. All right now. Look, I told you we're gonna hold y'all accountable today. Hi, Felicia.
Hello.
How are you?
Is this on? Can y'all hear me?
It's a little low.
Is it low?
You're a little low, a little low. Okay. How are you doing today?
I'm tired.
Me. Look, y'all, the honesty, and I'm hungry, but we gonna get through it though.
We are.
I done ate about 3 bananas. It's not working.
But I'm super happy to be here. So thank y'all so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. I have been actually following your creative journey for quite some time, and you have now created a very unique approach to amplifying and inspiring other creatives such as yourself. So take us into the comeback. How did that actually come about, the concepts of it, and why is it geared towards women for the most part that's over 40 years old?
Yeah, so just to give you a quick background, I started out as a journalist, and then I wrote books. And then books became very hard because there's a lot of words. So I stopped writing books, but also they just became hard for me. I didn't realize it then that they were not my form. Okay. So I made probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, and I stopped writing. And I stopped writing for about 7 years. And in that time, I was essentially what we call now an impact producer. I was helping other creatives connect their social impact work with audiences. Very gratifying work. But there came a time when I was like, I want to get back to my own creativity. At the time, I was living in the DMV. My mentor was like, well, why don't you move to the biggest market? Why don't you move to LA? And I was like, okay. After many people telling me that before, it was like the right time. I was 35 years old, and at that point, I had started to kind of self-teach myself screenwriting.
Okay.
So I came out here with one script, but no relationship to my work and my craft and no creative process. And what I found was that if I wanted to actually be serious about this as a career, I had to find my way back to my writing, and I had to find my way back to a creative process.
Right.
And so in doing that, and we could talk more about that later down the line, I was like, how did I get back to my creative self? I need to document that, one, so I don't get off track again. Okay. But then two, so I can share with others. And so the Creative Comeback was born. We have a 21-day Creative Comeback Challenge that we do. And then we also have a Creative Comeback workbook and journal, all under the Create Daily, which I've been running since 2012. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Create Daily. Okay. Yes. So it's all under that as a way to just help my fellow creatives stay committed to the craft and stay committed to our process.
So what I gathered is essentially you use your own experience, your canvas, and you help create a roadmap for other people to now create as well. And y'all, she didn't really have a plan. Did y'all hear that? She took some risk. So sometimes, we'll kind of get stuck in, okay, I need to do this first. I need to get this in order. Okay, I can't do this before I do this. And you pretty much just begin to just do it and figure it out along the way.
Yeah, and I really resonated with what Michelle was talking about, because when I came to LA, I definitely was not ready. I was that potato in the bag, not ready, didn't know how the business worked or any of that, didn't understand how to get a movie made, none of those things. I just knew that I had something. I was holding on to the sliver of belief in myself and in my talent, and that kind of kept me going. But everything else, logistics, how things work, I had no idea.
I can relate to that. Like you, I started as a writer. Now I'm good. I like the words. I like the long version of storytelling. But for me, when it came to connecting the dots and getting people to discover the stories, I didn't really know how to technically do that because I was independent. So I had to create a space and then invite others into that space. And I didn't think about if people were going to show up. I just did it. And similar to your journey, you kind of just did it, kind of figuring it out, not really knowing if you were doing it right or wrong, not having a lot of built-in relationships. And so was that scary for you emotionally? How did that kind of weigh on you?
Yeah, it was definitely scary, but I think if I knew too much, I wouldn't have done it. Do you know what I mean? And I think if I overthought, if I was in my overthinking, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I think there was something to be said with, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I just made the leap to move here. And I just kept sort of that faith. But then I realized very quickly that this business, Hollywood in particular, if you do not have a strong relationship to the work and the craft, it is hard to sustain yourself, right? You could, come out the gate and be hot and all that, but it's hard to sustain that when you don't have a relationship to the work. And I also realize that the relationship to the work is the most important thing. Everything else is gravy.
Wow. Me personally, just hearing your story, listening to your process, self-teaching yourself, stepping out on faith. Any of these things set you back? Let's talk about the spaces that you were in where perhaps you made the wrong decision, or maybe you should never spent money on this, or you made this connection was not as valuable as you thought. Any setbacks that you had to then reevaluate yourself? Perhaps you probably thought about going back home. Or maybe this is just too much. Can we talk about those spaces and how you push through?
I'm in that space now.
But
I want to say around 2017 was a really tough year for me because I had my first real experience with the business, and I was like, oh, people are nutty. And integrity is not valued or prioritized. So I do think that there are consequences to staying in your integrity. You're going to move slower. So I did learn that. But then around that time, my father died, and I was in a toxic relationship. And so that's when I was like, oh, wait a minute. Life is going to keep lifing. I need to get my tools up. And that's when I started therapy. And that really changed my life. Personally, yes, but also as an artist. Because what I recognized were two things. One, I was not feeling my feelings. And I say this all the time as artists. How can we translate emotion onto the screen and onto the page if we're not feeling our own emotions authentically, if we're not feeling our own emotions? And then two, it just allowed me to go deeper in the work. I think I was kind of surface, but once I started to be comfortable in myself and get through the shame, I was able to go deeper in the work. So those were setbacks sort of in the way that I knew they were going to keep coming. I knew setbacks were going to keep coming, so I need to have tools in order to deal with them.
What did that look like, being in it?
Depression.
No, for you in particular. Some of the... Okay.
Yeah, it looked like depression. It looked like also very low self-worth. And so what I found was I knew that was I knew it was a season, but people around me didn't know what it was a season. So when I came back on my shit, people were like, wait a minute, I thought you were still in your self-worth. Oh, no. That was a season. This is actually who I am. Get to know her and recognize. So that was also something I had to reconcile, was that people were taking advantage of me and my low self-worth. And once I got out of it, I had to let them know.
Right. And so the creative comeback, let's dive back into how you're sharing your journey with others and being vulnerable in that space. Can you tell us some of the success stories or some of your, students or people that are part of your community, some of those stories that you feel that, okay, my work is working?
Yeah, I think it's when people just tell me that they started writing again. And it doesn't have to be every day, but just that they started writing or they recognized that they needed a process. Because I think the other thing that I realized early on is that the creative process is sacred and we need to protect it. And not a lot of people understand the creative process, particularly suits and execs do not necessarily understand the creative process, but we have to trust in it, right? So it's like you're in that first draft, and that first draft is so bad. It's so bad. If you don't trust the creative process, you're never going to get through on the other side. But I know when my first drafts are bad, I trust so much in my creative process and my talent, I'm going to get it where it needs to be. So our ability to trust in that process is huge. So when people tell me I've developed a process or I've developed a ritual or I'm writing again, those to me are success stories.
And so how can, for those that may be in the process of trying to figure it out, I myself, and I feel that you kind of evolve and you become a new person or a new version of yourself every several years or so. You're supposed to be growing and becoming someone new or a better version of yourself. How or what are some tools on how they can tap into a process and discover what works for them?
Well, I think one thing that helped me was getting in community with others. because that helped me to see that others had different processes and that I could kind of pick and choose to develop my own. So that helped. I do also think being able to start, people are always like, how do I get started writing? I'm like, you start writing. But what tells me is that you're afraid. Like, if you can't just sit down, it's some sort of fear. So I think a lot of it, to me, I always go back to the self-work. We have to interrogate that fear. Where is it coming from? We have to be able to name it, speak to it, journal about it, whatever it takes to get underneath there. So I would definitely say those are places to start.
And so for you right now, currently, are you currently healing from something?
Ooh, I think I'm always healing for something, because the one thing that I feel like we don't talk enough about with growth is that growth can be lonely, and that evolving can be lonely. You find yourself growing past situations and people and relationships, and that can be lonely. So there's a grief aspect to that. So I think I'm definitely partly there in grieving certain situations, even if they're not the best for you. They still were a part of your life. So I think that's where I am.
Wow. You hit it on the head. For me in particular, and you guys probably can relate as well, when you want to dream or you have these goals and you want to do something that's bigger than life, some people get caught up in routines or being secure with what they have as far as, the going to work, or I'm going to pursue this degree and this is the plan. I'm going to stick to this plan. And if you find yourself not wanting to do that, it really can get lonely. People can judge you or sometimes try to detour you from even pursuing that. You crazy. What you mean you doing that? Why would you do that? Like questioning that.
And projecting their fears onto you.
Yes, and projecting. Now, I grew up weird. I'm a PK kid. So when I was young, I mean, everything to me was, I couldn't roll my eyes because I didn't want to go to hell. Right. So, like, for real, I was like, dang, God is a bully. That's how I felt. Like, what we doing? Right. So engaging with other students, that didn't really come natural for me. So as I told y'all earlier, my journals was my friends. Like, I used to create my friends in my books. And so I used to cry sometimes because I was lonely. I used to, play, school. And I used to have students in my grade books, and, I had students in the back talking, I get on them, ain't nobody there talking to make-believe people. It was a journey. So now that I'm older, though, and I continue to want to do things that's bigger than life, I have found that I actually enjoy my company.
Talk about it.
And I think that when you're growing, you're dreaming, it may definitely get a little bit lonely, right?
And I enjoy my peace. And I find that, especially in this business, like, chaos is prioritized, it's celebrated, it's all the things, and I really like my peace. So I think also part of the things that I had to learn, or a tool that I have, is like, what is a healthy way to have a defense mechanism, right? Because sometimes we don't want defense to shut down relationships that are important to us. We don't want defense to be a proxy for fear, but sometimes we need to protect our space in our circle. So, like, how do we do that in a healthy manner is something that I had to learn as well.
Well, please share, because I just be cutting folks out.
I mean, I think even in the cutting off, I think I had to learn more empathy around that.
Okay, I could use a little help. Yeah, I heard a couple feelings, but my thing is, I like me, and I'm a put me first. Yeah. Like, even and I was dreaming at my biggest, at the height of my writing career, when I was really writing books and traveling. My children were right there with me. Mm-hmm. My son would be if he was here with me, he'd be at my vendor table selling books. He could tell you about every storyline, and ever since he was 5, he was selling the books. I made a family affair. Just finding a balance to do it all. And I encourage mothers and fathers and people that have, you're taking care of someone, to find a balance and to choose you. And that's okay to say no. I actually like that word. That's one of my favorite words to say. But empathy. I need to find a nicer way to, to tap into
And
that.
and I would say to take no further that it's okay to walk away too, because sometimes
Yes,
we
it
say
is.
yes and then we feel like we need to be committed throughout, even though this is a situation that is harmful or painful or just not for us anymore. It's okay to walk away. You want to do it with the most grace you can, but you can't control how people think or feel about you, no matter what. You can do all the right things, be in your integrity, and people still mad. You can't control that.
Not only that, it may also hurt as well too. Just because you cut somebody off and you miss them, right? Doesn't mean that you allow them back into your space. You are human. You're going to feel it too. It's sometimes it may hurt. It's not meant sometimes to be like, oh, now I feel light because I've gotten rid of this baggage or rid of this negative person. You may still miss them, but you do have to find the strength and like the endurance. Be like, nah, I don't like how they did me, so I'm stay in my ground, and you can stay on over there. That's what I do.
I would say I'm gonna pray for him.
Yeah,
I'm
do
gonna
that
pray
too.
for him.
Yeah, pray for. I mean, yeah, definitely praying for them and praying for your enemies. You got to.
Oh, I don't pray for my enemies.
I do. I be like, well, bless them. Yeah, I kind of put like good juju sometimes out there, but karma she spins the block on her own anyway.
She do it herself.
I don't have to wish any bad on them at all, but the universe kind of does the work.
Yes.
So now that we are, and I say we because I'm joining the plus 40 soon.
Oh yes, honey. Yes. Well,
I got 2 years out. I'll be there.
It is good over here.
But now that I've gotten older, and I realize that my wisdom is like on 10. Like I can foresee things that may happen and transpire. And so for those that may not quite be there where they are not as connected and they lack discernment. What are some tools and some things they can tap into so they can strengthen that discernment and know when things are for them, when people are for them, when it's not?
Well, I think that we all have intuition, and I feel like I wish we encourage the use of our intuition more, and we encourage the strengthening of our intuition more. So I would probably say that's what I would lean on, is that little voice that you hear inside. I think a lot of times we shut it down or ignore it, but a lot of times we know what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and either we ignore it or we allow others to have more influence than our intuition. So that's what I would say, is kind of lean on your intuition more.
Or sometimes we take too long. Like we know that we're supposed to be cutting and we'll kind of drag our feet. Don't do that either.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
So now I recently saw that you have a new project coming out. You're a showrunner on a new Amazon Prime project, correct?
Yes.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's still early in the process, but we're adapting. So Honey Child is my production company. We are geared towards Black women 40 and over, in front of and behind the camera. And so in partnership with Will Packer Media and Kinetic, we are adapting Tia Williams' 7 Days in June, which is one of my favorite books, for Amazon. So fingers crossed that we continue to move forward. But yeah, so far so good.
And so, yes, another hand clap for that. Because I'm nosy. I want to tap in a little bit more. Being a showrunner, explain to those that may not quite know, because there are a lot of different roles on production. And I know that showrunners, like, they up there. Like, they make all the decisions and moves and how the story going to flow, what this look like. So, am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure, because I don't want to be like, she don't know what she's talking about.
Oh, you're right.
Okay, so take us a little bit into how do you get there? Like, I mean, a lot of us may have aspirations to write and create and act and things like that, but that road, that's like, you the boss on set.
Well, this would be my first experience show running, but the job is actually much more of a business job because you have to keep the show running, literally.
Right.
So yes, you are in charge of the creative, right? So one of your biggest jobs is quality scripts on time, like making sure the scripts get on time, but also you're making all the decisions around costume and hair and music, and you're going through post and edits. You're also working with your studio and network partners and any other production partners that you have. You're managing talent. So you are overseeing, sometimes a $300 million business, depending on what your budget is per episode. But these are big businesses that you're managing. So for those of you who want to become showrunners, it's really important for, yes, you be an amazing writer, right? And be able to write fast, understand how to solve story problems, be able to rewrite, but also start to brush up on business skills, managing people, leadership, being able to deal with difficult personalities, being able to have difficult conversations, all of those things. I think as writers, we're not taught that a lot. We don't have a lot of experience with that because we're in our bat cave just doing the work. But the more that you can sort of step into and understand what a good leader and the type of leader you want to be, and being able to be confident in raising your voice in terms of what needs to be done, but also being kind, all those things, starting to cultivate those skills now.
Wow. Okay. Just like you talking to me. I had to learn the hard way in a lot of those spaces because, again, I just stumbled into this. Yeah. So a lot of this is business. After the creative part, that's the fun part, creating the stories, creating the characters, but making it come alive, connecting the dots, putting the pieces together. That requires a lot of business savvy and being able to execute, to delegate, to down to budgeting. Yes. And honestly, the project and the people that work with you is only going to be as successful as you are, as good as you are. So when I found myself, some of my projects I was doing when things wasn't working, I had to check myself.
You set the tone.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, I ain't doing a good job.
Yeah. But that's true. Like, you have to realize, people are following my example. I'm setting the tone. Yeah,
you got to humble yourself and be like, I can still learn. Yeah. There's still spaces for me to grow. Absolutely. And are you still actively growing?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's the favorite part of life. Is I was just talking about this the other day. Like, I turned in this feature script, which I think is the best thing I've ever written. And I've been writing for 20 plus years. And the fact that I still getting better makes me very excited because the work works. The work that I put in to write and rewrite some more and get more feedback, rewrite again, then keep rewriting, it works. And the process of getting to know myself better and making better decisions for my career that align with what I really want to do, and it's working. And so that makes me very, very proud.
I'm very proud of you as well. Like, again, give Felicia a hand clap. Like, you literally made a comeback, a creative comeback. And then you said, this is how I did it. Let me share. And not only did you share, you said, come into this space and share with others. Like, then you create a space for other people. That is a very beautiful thing to do.
I want to give you have created many spaces for people, this being your latest one, but you have been doing events for years where you're bringing creative communities together and you're showcasing Black talent and you're uplifting us. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. And I enjoy this, y'all. This is very fun. Again, I wouldn't be doing nothing else. I really don't want to do nothing else. So yes, tell y'all friends and stuff about what we doing. For real. Any questions for Felicia? I do want to open up the opportunity for people to ask questions. If you do have some, if you just want some feedback or advice, yes, ma'am. You too beautiful. Stand up.
So I know that you said this is your first time show running. When you have a team member who is capable but not seemingly willing, what is your leadership advice in that space?
I think you have to have a conversation because there's something going on, right? So how can we try to, even if it's so personal that you may not want to be privy or they can't let you privy, but something's going on. And I think the conversations go a long way. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we skip over that piece, or we don't ask the right questions, or we don't lead with empathy in that way. So even in that conversation, being able to lead with empathy and really be like, what's going on? I know your potential. I know what you're capable of. I know what you want to do. I feel like something's going on. And starting there.
That's a good question. And also I would say when you're working and partnering with someone, y'all go together. Literally.
It's so true. It's so true.
And you gotta, and when you want your relationships to work, you have to talk it out. Now, sometimes, ladies, I know we want our partners to read our minds. No. They don't. Nobody's mind readers. You have to actually communicate. So that's the same in partnerships as well, and having those uncomfortable conversations. When your Moria comes out, we're gonna talk about it as well, because putting this together as a collective, as a duo, we come from two different worlds. I come from the publishing space, and again, I just trying to bring people out to get my book. So I stumbled into this. Yeah. And Yamoria, she's trained. And so I had to humble myself as well and be like, that's how you do that? Oh, I like how you did that. Like, open up my eyes and my ears and be willing to learn and vice versa. So it was I enjoyed it. Yeah. And, I had to, it's an adjust. Because when you're used to being the showrunner, right, you got to adjust and be like, nope, this ain't just me. Right. So it's a process. So having those uncomfortable conversations for sure. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, hello Felicia. Hi. Thank you for being in this space. Thank you for having this space with all these beautiful people. My name is Tamara. I'm also a writer, director, and filmmaker. And I started on the business side of TV. So I got a feel for the business first before getting fully into the creative space. So to piggyback off the show running conversation, I know you're new in this space, but I know you also have taken steps to prepare. So I have kind of like a two-part question. One, what are some of the things you did to prepare yourself for this role? And two, now that you are in this role, even if it's like an objective POV that you've taken, what are some of the skills in that arena, that show running arena, that you feel like this is what is prioritized now? And then once we kind of get the ball rolling, these are the skills I have to tap into to fully see this through. So two big questions, but
remind me of the first one again. I'm sorry.
Now I'm like, let me remember.
Oh, how did I prepare? Well, it's
how did you prepare? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm learning too is the show running job. First of all, it just seems absurd when you think about all the things that they have to do. So from a tactical standpoint, I'm trying to learn more about post, right? Because I feel like that's an area where writers often may not be a part of in a real way. So finding ways to learn more about post, for instance, that's more tactile. On the softer skills side is definitely preparing myself for leadership and understanding what type of leader that I want to be. How do I want to show up and represent? And I think part of that is self-work. I think know thyself is a huge part of, at least for me, how I want to move in this role. So it's tactile stuff in terms of getting some of those skills up. Right now I'm in the WGA showrunner training program, which is one of the only programs that actually trains showrunners. But even then, they can't tell us everything about the job, right? And every day is different about the job, but at least having some sort of foundation is helpful. But what I have learned from showrunners I have had, you learn things you want to take and things you don't want to take. And what I'm recognizing more and more is how organized you have to be. You have to be incredibly organized, and you have to have a team around you who is incredibly organized, because so many things can slip through the cracks. Because imagine, you might be shooting episode 304, you're in post for episode 301 and several cuts, you're writing 302. You have to be able to track all the things that are happening with that. I think hiring well, so being able to know what you need, so know your strengths and weaknesses, and find people who can help fill in the gaps is really, really important, because whoever's around you is going to dictate how much more work you have to do, right? How strong your number 2 is, how strong your number 3 is really going to help dictate everything else. I also think, again, I think it comes back to really being able to be decisive, and that's across the board. That's decisive in your storytelling. So I found some showrunners waste so much time because they can't make a decision on what direction the story should take. And that could be from a scene level, that can be from a script level, that can be from a season level. So I think having decisiveness and knowing look, this train is moving, I have to make a decision, and also being able to have enough influence that everybody gets on board. Right. I also think having people skills and in terms of influence in that way, right? Because you don't just need to influence the room. You got to influence your line producer to be this is important. We need it. I know you're saying we don't have the money, but can we find the money someplace because it's important? You have to influence your producing director. You have to influence your studio partners. To be able to affect influence, but also know when to use your capital, right? Know when this is a situation that I should use my capital on. This is a situation where I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm going to let it go because it's going to be something more important down the road. So I think discernment in that way, for sure.
And that was beautifully answered. We have time for one more question. I can't remember who had their hand up. She did. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kiana. I'm a writer, director, and
Hi, Kiana.
Hi.
the script teaching workshop after this. If you all want to participate.
Oh, congratulations. Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of your work. I'm very appreciative of everything that you've created. My question for you is, how do you approach the rewriting process, especially if you don't go externally for feedback, or if you're still like in the weeds? How do you constantly improve with each draft? Like, what's your process?
Well, I always recommend go externally for feedback. Do not get feedback from somebody else. I think what is important as we're developing our creative process is also developing our feedback circle, your trusted group of people that you send work to. This could be your peers, it could be a writer's group, it could be, a reader, a story editor, whatever the case is, but I think that's really important. I try to get to the rewrite process as quickly as possible because that's my friend. I think what happens a lot of times is people write and rewrite at the same time and don't get anywhere. You want to I try to throw up a draft, and then I first try to spend as much time in outline as possible, working out as many story problems, throw up the draft because I have a tight outline, and then spend the equal amount of time that I've probably spent in outlining rewriting. Because rewriting is where you're able to really get into the nitty-gritty of things. And I start global. So I start with the forest, then I go to the trees, then I go to the leaves in terms of rewriting. Like, is this structure working? Are the characters working? Then you get into scene work, and then you get into more minuscule stuff. But rewriting is our friend. And I would say get feedback at the outline stage, get feedback at a draft stage that you feel comfortable in. I don't usually send first drafts to people because no. But when you finally get a draft that you feel comfortable, then get feedback on that. For instance, for certain projects, I'll get maybe 4 or 5 rounds of feedback before I even send it to my producer partner. That's before it goes to the studio. So yeah, that's how I would say.
All right, y'all. That is our time. Thank you so much, Felicia, for joining us.
Thank you.
Amazing job. Continued
Thank
success.
you for this wonderful conversation.
Yes, ma'am. And so you guys make sure to share your experience and how you enjoyed this conversation. Jump in that chat.